See that lot of unusual specifics in this case, the amount of money made, the family history. But does this ruling mean that in future, if one partner or the other does better after a divorce, the loser can go back to court and try and get some more money?
Potentially it does. The key point that comes out of this ruling today is that there is no time limit for bringing claims after a divorce. And very often people forget that, and they think that if they, for example, apply for their DIY divorce online, that's the end of it, without realising that sting in the tail. However, what the ruling doesn't do today is actually make a substantive award to Ms Wyatt, and that's a point that really mustn't be lost in all of this. All that the Supreme Court has said is effectively you get past go, you can now go to the High Court and they can determine the merits of your claim, and they've also given a very strong indication that there are limits to what she can
Yes, but
claim.
on the other hand, he didn't say you might go back and get nothing. I mean, from the view of the Supreme Court, she should get something, just not nearly £2 million.
Yes, I think the words a comparatively modest award were used, and certainly the nearly £2 million
he talked about her buying a modest house, which is...
Absolutely so, and that would be really justified by reference to the contributions that it said she made during the marriage, but after the marriage in bringing up the 2 children.
Now, does this clash with the other recent rulings we've had of a judge telling a wife to get a job and it wasn't the obligation of her husband in this case, although it could have been the other way around, to go on supporting her?
Not sure it necessarily clashes, but the point here is very much that one needs to bear in mind the possibility of coming back. I think the anxiety I had as a practitioner when I was speaking to people before the ruling came out is ensuring access to justice and ensuring that people out there who may not be able to get legal advice won't be penalised for that if they come back years down the line. As against that, however, I can understand entirely people saying, but there needs to be certainty and there needs to be some principle of working towards independence within a defined period of time. Resolution as an organisation, we would like to see greater clarity in the law to work towards that.
Who's paid for the wife's legal fees in this case? I mean, she says she's having to travel on buses and sleep in bus shelters. How can she afford to go to the Supreme Court?
That's a very interesting point, and that's something which had been dealt with in the courts below. In essence, in the High Court, an award had been made for the husband to pay the costs on an interim basis. The Court of Appeal had said, no, that's not fair, that can't follow. If there's no realistic prospect of success here, why should he be doing that? So that aspect, again, has been overturned by the Supreme Court today, so that along the way her costs will be funded.
By the husband? By the husband. Whatever happens now, they won't necessarily be taken out of that settlement if it comes about.
That would all be coming out in the wash when the case goes back, as it now will, to the High Court.
I mean, one hesitates to say this, but it looks like the only winners in all this are the lawyers.
Well, I think it's fair to say the profession were shocked by this ruling today.
But we don't have divorce codified in the way that it is in many countries, where you can pretty much feed in the money and get a formula out at the end.
That's absolutely right. What we have here is a very broad discretion in this country, and I know that means that we are able, our judges are able to tailor their awards, and it may well mean in this case...
It means people have to use the courts more than they would in other countries.
That's absolutely the case. I would agree with that, and that's been a criticism that we as a country have been subjected to, and as you may be aware, there was a bill in the House of Lords only last summer in which they said effectively there does need to be greater certainty. As I've said, Resolution as an organisation, we support that. We think that there should be greater clarity, because what we want is to see more couples being able to work out their own solutions by going to mediation or other forms of dispute resolution, not by having to go through costly, extensive litigation such as that which this couple have been through.